A very important role player and facilitator of the Vedas is an Amsar or partial avatar of Lord Vishnu, named Sage VYASA. Vyasa means compiler, hence he was the compiler of the Vedas. Vedas is an ocean where each drop is filled with depth and divine energy. Vyasa was able to categorize the Vedas into certain themes, like when we put certain utensils in certain parts of the cupboard in the kitchen for certain uses. So too, the Vedas were categorized accordingly. Let's remember this acronym, which is chronological from the oldest to the earliest. RYSA or RYSA stands for Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda. Rigveda is the foremost of the Vedas, a collection of illuminating hymns of wisdom called suktas, su and ukta, well said or beautifully expressed. These hymns verbalize the mystical experiences of the sages or rishis in deep states of meditation. The entire essence of the Rigveda lays emphasis on unity according to Bhagwan Baba. In the Rigveda, most of the suktams dedicated to certain deities and devas can be found, such as Meda Suktam, Ganapati Suktam, Narayana Suktam, etc. Next is Yajurveda. Yajur is derived from root word yaj, to sacrifice. What are we sacrificing? We are sacrificing the inner enemies that are causing bondage and rebirth, so that we may be free of negative tendencies that prevent our spiritual progress. An interesting side note, the Yajurveda has two parts, namely Shukla Yajurveda and Krishna Yajurveda. Let's have a short story of how this Veda has two branches from the same root. Sage Vaisampayana had many students, of whom Yajnavalkya was one. Sage Vaisampayana was no ordinary teacher. He was himself the pupil of the great sage Vedavyasa. One day Yajnavalkya had a dispute with Vaisampayana. Yajnavalkya spoke disparagingly of Vaisampayana's other disciples and claimed that he was the knowledgeable one among Vaisampayana's disciples. Yajnavalkya's argumentative attitude angered his teacher. So Vaisampayana said to Yajnavalkya, "Throw up all the Vedas that I have taught you." Yajnavalkya accordingly threw up what he had learnt. However, in view of the sacredness of the Vedas, Vaisampayana was anxious that they should not hit the ground. So he ordered his other disciples to take the form of partridges or the Titriya birds. These pupils in the form of Titriya birds swallowed up the Vedas as they came out of Yajnavalkya's mouth. Because the Titri birds prevented what Yajnavalkya threw up from falling to the ground, this portion acquired the name Taitriya. Yajnavalkya repented and had to leave the Gurukul. But through his sincere perseverance, penance, patience and purity, he worshipped the sun god. And the sun god compassionately appeared before the sage in the form of a horse and began teaching Yajnavalkya a very special part of the Vedas. What Yajnavalkya learned as a result of his penance came to be known as Shukla, or white, portion of the Yajurveda. What has been thrown up by Yajnavalkya came to be known as the Krishna, or black, part of the Yajurveda. Both very important parts. Third is the Samaveda. The Samaveda is considered as the root of classical music and dance. They are texts of harmonious, joyful chants or sermons to be sung to certain melodies. It is considered as the storehouse of the melodious chants that are offered whilst a yajnam or prayer ceremony is being conducted to purify the atmosphere. A fun fact, these three Vedas mentioned, consisting of Rigveda, Yajurveda and Samaveda, are also known together as Trehi. And the last and earliest of the four Vedas is the Atharvaveda, known as the storehouse of Atharvanas, the procedures for everyday life. Sacred texts of mystical formulas and chants that are used during certain ceremonies such as marriages, births, and funeral ceremonies, as well as the formula intended to counteract the effects of karmic diseases and forces of chaos, are found in the Atharvaveda. Together, these four constitute the Vedas.